Harimi, harimi, al tirai, harimi, al tirai. Imri le'arei Yehuda, hine Elokeichem. Harimi, harimi, al tirai.
Shall we begin?
Bakasha.
Okay. Page 280, the bilingual edition. And we're on Siman Kuf Chaf, 120. Amar Seichel. Says the Seichel. Ve'ata evarlach mitziuso shel ha'adam lefi inyan zeh shel himatzei harash zacharnu. So until now we've been talking about evil, how evil was created, and things like that. Now the Ramchal wants to discuss how this relates to the human being, how the creation of the human being relates to this existence of evil. Amra HaNeshama, says the Neshama. Daber, Kishama Sanechi. Speak. I'm listening now, because remember this whole book is a conversation between the Neshama, who is trying to learn, and the Seichel, the intellect, who is teaching. So the Neshama says, teach me, tell me, I'm listening. Amra Seichel, Betchila Aktim L'cha Aktama Achas, Tzrichel Inyanav. However, first I need to give you an introduction to describe what we're speaking about. It's something he does very often. He says, we're going to discuss something, but I need to give you an introduction. The introduction is usually very deep. Amar Neshama Emor, says the Neshama, say, speak. Amar Seichel, says the Seichel. Mitzius ha'adam bonehu b'chachma amuka le'ein tachlis. A human being is built with deep wisdom, infinite deep wisdom. Ki ha'adam baruchu bara nivraim rabim gedolim. Hashem created many great creations. Gavoa ma'al gavoa, gavoa ma'aleim. He created creations and then created creations greater than them and greater than them until very lofty creations Hashem made. Kulam tzrichim l'mishmartam, and they all have their certain level and their boundary. She'ein shum davar levatala. Nothing in the world was created for naught. Everything has a purpose. But even the mosquito has a purpose.
What about the appendix?
The appendix. You know, they just found that, not just, but within a few years ago, I read that the appendix helps to restore the bacteria after someone has diarrhea. It restores the bacteria in the stomach, the appendix. They just found that.
That's pretty good.
Rabbi Becher, when he came here, spoke, or maybe it was one of his recordings, that, back when he was a kid, if you had a sore throat, they would take your tonsils out right away.
Right.
And he said now they're finding, not now, but recently, after he was a kid, they found out that the tonsils help fight certain types of infections. So now they don't take them out as much. So he wants to, and he was pointing out, it was a very arrogant stance, well, we don't understand what it is, so therefore it has no purpose. Other option being is we don't yet understand what it's here for. So it's a very, secular, scientific, arrogant point of view that since we now currently don't understand why it's here, we're going to assume it has no purpose. And not only that, we're going to take it out of your body based on our understanding. But now we know that it does have a purpose. Everything in the world has a purpose. And everything stands on this fundamental idea. What Hashem wants from human beings is that human beings rectify all of the deficiencies in the world. And he should elevate himself, elevation upon elevation, until he cleaves to Hashem's holiness. So a human being is here. Why is a human being here? Is to rectify all of the deficiencies in the world, and through that elevate himself and to cleave to Hashem. Some call Yane harichu k'mimanu yizbarach v'chal to deseim v'chal Yane hiskara v'lav v'chal to deseim v'kulam devarim amukim v'atsumim ma'od. Hashem put into the world things that could help a person achieve this goal and also cause a person to distance himself from this goal. And they're all very deep things. But all these things in the world, everything in the universe, is made for the ultimate purpose that in the end of everything, the end of time, that we're going to reach this full completeness. Everything that happens in the world, all of the good and all of the evil, everything has a purpose, and that ultimate purpose is that Hashem should reveal Himself to humanity, and all of humanity will recognize that Hashem is one. So we have all these horrible things happening, even all this anti-Semitism that's happening now, is the ultimate purpose is that people recognize that Hashem is one, and that they will eventually come around to that recognition. Now, we might not understand currently how each individual action or each individual event that's taking place will lead to that recognition of how Hashem is one, but ultimately we believe that everything that happens is for that recognition. So when Mashiach comes and the end of time comes, and when Hashem reveals Himself, we will understand retroactively why all these things had to happen, why the Holocaust had to happen, big things like that, and smaller things, why a rapper with 32 million followers on Twitter had to go nuts and say horrible things about Jews that other people parrot and feel more emboldened now. Now other people feel more emboldened to say horrible things about Jews and how that could negatively affect the Jewish people. Right? So we'll understand how all of those things led to this ultimate goal. But the ultimate goal is, what we're supposed to be doing now, is that human beings are supposed to be rectifying the deficiencies in the world to elevate ourselves to come close to Hashem. And the ultimate completeness is when Hashem will reveal Himself, and then Olam Haba, the next world, when we will be close to Hashem. V'amnam ratza haratzon ha'elyon shetiyeh yad ha'adam magas l'kol ha'anyanim harabim ha'ele shekulam misnanim et nuasav u'masim shel ha'adam. Now all of these things in the world that we've discussed, all of them are affected by the actions of man. V'hare'ela koniyos gedolos ke'or ligim hazeh she'ofanav pogshim zubazu v'ofan katan menai eya ofanim gedolim rabim. He says that the way man interacts with the world is that man's actions cause the world to causes different things to happen in the world. And he says, just like a clock could have a little gear, and that little gear will affect a big gear and make the hands turn. So too the actions of man affect all of these. We have all of these many different parts of this good in the world and the evil in the world and the interconnecting parts. But ultimately it's not just willy-nilly the things that happen. It's the actions of human beings that cause all of these things. When human beings do what they're supposed to do, then holiness comes to the world. And when human beings don't do what they're supposed to do, then the opposite happens. That's how Hashem made all of the creations connected. And all of the creations are interconnected, and all of those creations are connected to man. That he should cause everything through his deeds. And everything moves because of him. And Hashem covered all of this, covered humans with a body. That's this, the body is only the surface. What's inside the body? Konanios gedolos are great mechanisms. Shabar kodesh baruch hu ba'olam l'tzarcha eni nazeh kula l'masav avodaso. Li'iloye u'l'toseves kedosha li'razu l'prichusos chaz v'shalom b'chol l'matzav harabim. V'zeh rak al yidei hanasham b'chol chalkei v'shasheh asher klal b'gufo. He says that human beings have a body, but that's only the external. That's a very external part. What's really causing all of these things to happen in the world, and all of the interconnectedness, and all of the causing of an added of holiness or the opposite, that's all because of a person's soul. The way Hashem created the soul is that the soul is interconnected with all of these things in the world. The body is just a superficial cover. Okay. This is what King David said. Rabos asisa ata Hashem Elokai. You have done much, my God. Niflaosecha machshavasecha elenu. Your wonders and your thoughts are upon us. Omer. And it says, Odcha al kinaras niflesi. I will thank you on the wonders that you... I was formed in an extraordinary way. The body does not perceive these things like the soul. Because these things are not physical things, but rather they are spiritual things. So our bodies, we don't necessarily feel that we are controlling the entire world through our deeds and whatnot, because our body, it's something that only our soul can perceive. So just because we're living in a physical world, you could think, yeah, I'm just like, I don't know, I'm no different than a dog or a cat. I'm just living my life and have no effect on anything. But a dog and a cat doesn't have a lofty soul which affects the holy worlds. That's like, I say this story when the Russians, when Khrushchev said when Yuri Gagarin went into, whatever his name is, the first Russian in space, he said he went into space and he didn't see God. It's a very Greek view. Hanukkah is coming up. The Greeks believed that you could only perceive what you could see on the physical, which is a ridiculous assumption. right? First of all, that's what it is. It's an assumption. It's not something you can prove scientifically. And they said he didn't see God. Well, obviously he didn't see God. God's not physical. You can't see God just because you went into space. God is not like we grew up with in the movies, some old man with a beard who's like on a cloud somewhere and gives out candy to people and things like that.
Stephen Hawking's too.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous for very intelligent people to make such a ridiculous claim. It's kind of funny, but there's a Yetzer Hara, there's an evil inclination that tries to get people to.
That was a propaganda message. Even if they did see God, they would still say we didn't see God.
Yeah.
So that's Russian. That's Russian.
Well, that's exactly the point. But it's not only Russians. We have to extricate the Russian from within ourselves because we all have a Yetzer Hara. It's a real evil inclination to want to say there's no God, because once there's no God, I can do whatever I want. So we all have that, I don't see God, or I didn't feel this way, I didn't feel that way. Those things are very very subjective.
Big challenge.
Yeah. Sometimes, Rav Einstetter from Ner Yisrael was saying, people complain that they don't feel spiritual in a certain way. So he says, well, how do you spend most of your life? Like, what are you doing most of your life? Are you watching? He was specifically talking about, being involved in inappropriate. If a person's involved in inappropriate activities, then that blunts his connection to spirituality. There's certain things that human beings do that they're not supposed to do that blunts a connection to spirituality. So if you're not able to feel Hashem, he's like, well, are you working to enhance the soul? Maybe it's like like wine tasters. They can discern different tastes in the wine that a normal person couldn't do because of years of practice, and they can say, oh, this one's a little tart and this one's a little sweet. So a person has to refine his soul to be able to perceive certain differences in spirituality. This doesn't come so naturally. But anyway, the main idea here is that a human being was created in order to fix the deficiencies in the world. We'll talk about specifically, I assume we're going to talk about, that doesn't mean like going out and necessarily making food shelters and things like that. That's a good thing to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fight for liberal causes and go to marches and protests and things. That's not what he means by rectifying the world. Tikkun Olam, that's something that was co-opted recently by leftist Jews. Really, it means following the mitzvahs. And now it could be that obviously some of the mitzvahs are doing chesed and making food shelters, but it includes other mitzvahs as well. And through that, we rectify the world and rectify ourselves, and we become closer to Hashem, and that's the ultimate goal. And we also mentioned that everything that's going on in the world is to ultimately lead to the point where human beings recognize that there's one God, and that we should serve Him. Okay.
Shkol.